Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and the Restless Official 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Phyllis Summers had lived most of her adult life spinning plates in the air, lies, schemes, half-truths, impulsive betrayals, and carefully polished manipulations that always came back to bite her at the worst possible moment, and now, in the flickering aftermath of yet another blow-up with Lily Winters, she was finally forced to confront the one truth she had never wanted to admit. Kane Ashby might actually be the last real chance she had at something resembling stability, partnership, and affection that wasn't tangled in corporate sabotage or emotional warfare. The December 1st episode cracked open this emotional fracture line when Kane stumbled directly into the chaos, because of course he did, right at the moment Lily's hand was mid-air, the frustration pouring out of her in a verbal lash that sent Phyllis spiraling. And then Lily stormed out, leaving Kane standing there in the thick of it, torn between history and complications, and making a choice that instantly carved a canyon between him and Phyllis. His words still echoed in Phyllis's ears like hammer blows, "I've picked my side." It wasn't said with cruelty, but it was said with finality, and that was worse. Kane was exhausted, tired of the whispers, tired of the second-guessing, tired of trying to figure out what was real with Phyllis and what was just another fire she was setting behind his back. And as the silence closed in after he left, Phyllis knew she had run out of runway. If she wanted Kane to stay in her life, if she wanted him to choose her instead of the frustrating but familiar pull of loyalty toward Lily, she was going to have to do something she almost never did. She would have to be honest. Actually honest. Fully, painfully, terrifyingly honest. And that meant 3 confessions, 3 detonations of truth, that could either rebuild the bridge between them or burn every remaining plank to ash. The first confession would be the one Phyllis had been avoiding since the moment Victor Newman walked into her hotel room with that smug, knowing look and the AI program tucked under his metaphorical thumb. Phyllis had convinced herself that as long as she didn't confirm anything out loud, Kane couldn't blame her for what happened to Arabesque. But she knew better. She always knew better. Kane had suspected for weeks that she was involved in the software theft, every expression on his face, every question he asked, and every moment of hesitation in his tone told her he had that hunch tucked deep inside him. And still, she lied. She denied and deflected, she joked and flirted, she kept insisting she was innocent even as Victor weaponized the program and destroyed Kane's company with surgical brutality. Now, with nothing left to lose, she might finally be ready to look Kane in the eyes and admit the entire truth. She took the program. She made the deal. She thought she was being clever, thought she was controlling Victor instead of letting him pull her strings like a marionette. She messed up, and Kane paid the price. The idea of making that confession left a cold pit in her stomach, but she also knew that if she didn't tell Kane herself, someone else would: Victor, Lily, Nikki, anyone watching from the sidelines with popcorn and judgments to spare. If Phyllis wanted a real foundation with Kane, then ripped open honesty about the AI betrayal had to be the first brick she laid. It wasn't just a confession, it was a plea for a clean slate. Because if Kane heard it from her lips instead of through the grapevine, maybe, just maybe, he'd understand that at least she was trying. The second confession clawing its way up her throat was far scarier, because it involved something Phyllis was even worse at handling than accountability: genuine emotion. Kane had always been someone she could spar with verbally, someone who didn't crumble under her sarcasm or her bravado, someone who matched her wit without being intimidated by her intensity. Somewhere between their clashes and their unlikely camaraderie, Phyllis had developed feelings, real feelings, inconvenient feelings, feelings she had buried under smirks and hair flips and flirty comments that always left her an escape hatch if things got too serious. But now that Kane was gravitating back toward Lily, now that Phyllis could see the familiar gravitational pull of old love and shared history tugging at him again, she felt panic rising in her chest. She didn't want to lose him, not to Lily, not to circumstance, not to the wreckage of her own missteps. For once she wasn't trying to manipulate him into staying, she genuinely wanted him to understand that this thing between them could be something meaningful if given oxygen and truth instead of secrets and games. So she might have to confess the feelings she'd never dared articulate. She would have to tell Kane that he mattered to her, not as a pawn, not as a momentary distraction, not as a business ally, but as the one man who saw her fire and didn't run from it. The one man who challenged her without belittling her, the one man who didn't want perfection, just honesty. Confessing her emotions meant surrendering a kind of power she'd always clung to. But if Kane was on the verge of walking away, maybe showing her vulnerable side was the only way to pull him back. And then there was the third confession, the wild card, the secret ace she'd been keeping up her sleeve long before Victor tried to crush Kane under his boot. Phyllis Summers didn't get cornered without beginning a backup plan. It was in her DNA. She had been whispering for weeks about a new venture, a mysterious project she wasn't ready to reveal yet. Everyone assumed she was bluffing. Maybe she was, right up until the moment she realized she might be able to turn her secret project into the very thing that could save Kane from Victor's grasp. Because Phyllis didn't just feel guilty, she felt responsible. And when Phyllis Summers feels responsible, she does something about it. This third confession would take everything she had, because it meant letting Kane in on her larger plan, a bold, risky blueprint that could put them both on Victor Newman's bad side in a way that was nearly irreversible. But Phyllis would do it anyway. She would reveal that her new venture wasn't just a hobby or another tech dream, it was a way to outmaneuver Victor, to dismantle some of the control he thought he had over Genoa City, and to give Kane a weapon he could use to rebuild everything Victor had burned down. A new program, a counterstrike system, a technological equalizer designed to turn the tables on Newman power once and for all. Phyllis knew pitching that idea might sound like another scheme, another reckless gamble, but it wasn't meant to be. It was her attempt to make amends with action instead of words. A sign that she wasn't just sorry, she was prepared to fight for Kane's redemption and for their possible future. Putting all three confessions together, her role in the AI theft, her genuine feelings for Kane, and her daring plan to help him take back control, meant exposing herself in a way she rarely did. It meant letting Kane see the unpolished, unfiltered truth of who she was, flawed, impulsive, passionate, and deeply afraid of losing the few people she actually cared about. If Kane chose Lily after all of this, she would have to accept it. But if there was even a flicker of a chance that honesty could bring him closer instead of pushing him further away, then Phyllis had to take that chance, not with charm, not with manipulation, not with a well-timed distraction, but with integrity she had buried for far too long. But Kane wasn't predictable. His loyalty to Lily ran deep, even if his frustration was growing. His connection with Phyllis was real, electric, undeniable, but it was also precarious, tied to too many unspoken questions. If Phyllis delivered these confessions, Kane would be forced to reevaluate everything he thought he knew about her motives and about their connection. Would he see this as a genuine turning point for her? Or would he fear it was just another performance meant to reel him back in? Phyllis hated the idea that she might lose either way. But she also sensed something shifting around Kane. He wasn't satisfied standing in Lily's shadow, nor was he comfortable being the collateral damage of Victor's machinations. He wanted someone who believed in him, supported him, fought beside him, not someone who tore him between guilt and obligation. If Phyllis could show him that she was willing to be that person, without the usual tricks, then maybe honesty wouldn't be a weakness after all. Maybe it would be the key to unlocking the kind of partnership she'd never allowed herself to imagine before. She could already picture the moment, Kane staring at her in disbelief as she rattled off the truths she'd hidden for months, his expression softening only when he realized she wasn't manipulating him, she was confessing, pleading, offering something real. And if Phyllis could pull off this honesty arc, it might just tilt the scales. But if she failed, if one confession landed wrong, if one truth stung too sharply, she might lose him forever. Still, Phyllis Summers wasn't built to surrender. She wasn't built to sit quietly while Lily Winters played the martyr or while Victor Newman played puppet master. If she had to torch her old self to save something new, she would do it. Even if it meant swallowing every instinct that told her to hide, joke, or deflect. The future with Kane was hanging by a thread. But for the first time, she wasn't trying to spin the thread into a web. She was trying to mend it. And if Kane could see that, if he could see the sincerity in these three confessions, then they might have a fighting chance. But Phyllis also knew the truth: honesty was a gamble, and she was betting everything. But even as Phyllis Summers convinced herself that honesty might be the angle that saved her future with Kane Ashby, a cold tremor of doubt slithered under her confidence. Because honesty wasn't just about saying true things, it was about facing the reality that the truth might not give her the outcome she wanted. Phyllis wasn't afraid of saying the words, she was afraid of the consequences they might unleash. For years she had learned how to control outcomes by controlling narratives. A little manipulation here, a little distraction there, an emotional sleight of hand whenever the moment required it. But this time she wasn't trying to win. She wasn't trying to force Kane to choose her. She was trying to show him that the woman he thought she was wasn't the whole picture, that somewhere underneath the messy history, the impulsiveness, the smirks, and the snark, there was someone capable of loyalty, accountability, and genuine affection. And the terrifying part was that this version of her had no armor. If Kane rejected her after the truth came out, she wouldn't be able to hide the hurt behind a sarcastic smile. As Phyllis paced her living room that night, replaying every heated moment between her and Kane over the last month, she recognized something she hadn't understood before: Kane had become her mirror. He reflected back the parts of herself she tried to bury, the longing for partnership, the desire for redemption, the wish to be seen not just as a brilliant problem solver or a dangerous wild card, but as a human being with fears, regrets, and hopes she never voiced. And unlike Jack, Nick, or even Jeremy Stark in her darkest moments, Kane didn't look at her like a project he wanted to fix. He saw her flaws, called her out on them, and still showed up, until now. But now he had declared a side, Lily's side, because Phyllis had pushed him to the edge. And this time, he might not step back from that edge. That thought haunted her as she sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the wall, wondering if Kane was already replaying the fight in his head too, wondering if he felt betrayed, foolish, or simply tired. Kane had always been someone who tried to choose the path of least conflict, but conflict followed him like a shadow. Lily and Phyllis represented two sides of a war he never asked to fight. One was security, familiarity, the past he once believed would carry him into the future. The other was Phyllis, chaos wrapped in charisma, unpredictability layered with passion, ambition dipped in gasoline. And Kane, for all his calm exterior, was drawn to that fire in ways he didn't fully understand. Phyllis knew this. She felt it every time he looked at her, like she was trouble he didn't want to want. Which was exactly why she had to confess everything before someone else beat her to it. Meanwhile, Kane wasn't sleeping either. He sat alone in the dim lighting of the Abbott guest house, elbows on his knees, replaying Lily's slap to Phyllis, the fury in Lily's voice, the shattered look in Phyllis's eyes before she covered it with bravado. He hated the fight. Hated being in the middle. Hated that Lily believed Phyllis was deliberately destroying his life. But the truth was, he didn't know what to believe anymore. Phyllis had lied before. She'd broken trust before. She'd bent the truth until it snapped more times than Kane could count. And yet, there were moments, quiet ones, where she let the facade drop and he saw something raw underneath. Those moments haunted him too. Kane wasn't just choosing Lily out of loyalty, he was choosing Lily because choosing Phyllis felt dangerous, like stepping onto a rickety bridge that might collapse at any moment. Not because she was bad, but because she was unpredictable. And unpredictability terrified Kane after losing Arabesque, after losing everything he had built. But as he leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples, he couldn't deny the weight of his own fears. Lily represented the safe choice. Phyllis represented the truth he didn't want to face, that he had feelings for her deeper than either of them had acknowledged. Feelings that could break him if he wasn't careful. And somewhere in the middle of that emotional tangle, Kane realized something. Lily had stormed out so quickly that he never actually heard why Phyllis and Lily were fighting in the first place. He assumed it was another petty clash, another verbal war. But what if it wasn't? What if Lily had provoked it? What if Phyllis was telling the truth about feeling cornered? What if, despite everything, Phyllis genuinely wasn't trying to sabotage him? That lingering question gnawed at him. Back at Phyllis's place, she finally picked up her phone. Her fingers hovered over Kane's name, the contact she had stared at for the better part of an hour, trying to gather the courage to call him. But she knew this couldn't be done over the phone. Not with the scope of what she had to say. So she typed a short message, "Can we talk? I need to tell you the truth." She stared at the words for a good 20 seconds before hitting send. The next morning arrived with a tension hanging over Genoa City like fog. Kane saw the message before he even got out of bed. And his first instinct was to ignore it, to give himself space, to protect himself. But something in the wording caught his attention. The truth. Phyllis never used that phrase without an agenda, and yet, this felt different. It felt desperate. It felt sincere. So he answered, "Meet me at Society. Noon." When Phyllis walked into Society, her heart thudding like a drum in her chest, she found Kane already seated at a table, arms crossed, expression unreadable. He didn't stand when she approached, didn't smile, didn't soften. And for once Phyllis didn't try to charm her way past the discomfort. She sat down, took a breath, and said the words she had convinced herself she was ready to say. "I've been lying to you," she confessed immediately, surprising even herself with the bluntness of it. "About the AI program. About Victor. About how much of what happened to Arabesque is actually my fault." Kane's expression flickered, hurt, frustration, a spark of vindication that he had been right all along. But he didn't interrupt her. He didn't bolt. He didn't explode. He stayed perfectly still. Phyllis took that as permission to continue. "I stole your program," she admitted, voice low but unwavering. "I made a deal with Victor because I thought I could control him. I thought I could outsmart him. And I was wrong, Kane. I was wrong, and you paid the price." Kane exhaled slowly, the truth settling between them like a 1,000-pound weight. "Why, Phyllis?" he asked quietly. "Why do that to me?" Phyllis swallowed hard. "Because I didn't think I could lose you yet. And because I thought, if I helped Victor, maybe he'd owe me. Maybe he'd stay out of your way. Maybe he'd leave you alone." "That's not how Victor works," Kane said, shaking his head. "I know that now," Phyllis whispered. Kane sat back, rubbing his jaw. The confession hurt, but it wasn't entirely surprising. And that was the problem, he wasn't shocked. He wasn't blindsided. He had expected something like this, and that realization made him feel foolish and weary. "Is that everything?" he asked. "No," Phyllis said. And then she dropped her second confession, the one that made her chest tighten. "I have feelings for you, Kane. Real ones. Not the flirty nonsense I hide behind. Not the power struggle. Real feelings." Kane blinked, blindsided by the sincerity in her voice. For a moment, he didn't breathe. Phyllis continued, unable to stop now. "I didn't want to admit it because I didn't think I deserved something real. And I definitely didn't think you'd ever choose me over Lily. But I had to say it, because I don't want to lose you without you at least knowing how I feel." Kane didn't speak. He looked away, overwhelmed. Phyllis felt panic creeping in, she was losing him. She had blown it. So she delivered the third confession, the one she hoped would shift everything. "And I can fix this," she said urgently. "I can help you take Victor down. I have a new program, a new venture. Something that can level the playing field. I didn't come here to manipulate you. I came because I want to help you get your life back. Not because I owe you, but because I care." Kane turned back to her, eyes wide. "You want to go after Victor?" "I want to protect you from him," Phyllis corrected. "I want to make things right." For the first time, the icy wall around Kane's expression thawed just slightly. He wasn't ready to forgive her. Not even close. But he wasn't ready to walk away either. "Phyllis, you just admitted you lied, you betrayed me, you manipulated a situation that destroyed my company, and now you're telling me you want to take down Victor Newman?" Kane asked slowly. "Do you hear how insane that sounds?" "Yes," she said instantly. "But insane is what I'm good at." Kane cracked the smallest, almost reluctant smile. That's not exactly comforting. It wasn't meant to be, Phyllis replied softly. It was meant to be honest. And that was the moment everything shifted. Because Kane realized that for once, maybe for the first time since he met her, Phyllis wasn't performing. She wasn't hiding behind seduction or hilarity or righteous fury. She was sitting in front of him stripped bare.